further ado.
Cliff called and he went into a little greater detail on the first speaker and how bad it was, and the second speaker, how bad it was, and he said, would you like to be our third? And I thought, sounded like a curse, really. Yeah. You know, when usually the way that it goes when Kelly and I go to a outing or a meeting or some kind of tour where we're going to see a lot of people, usually the routine in the car is, okay, straighten your collar, and please do not ask everybody what kind of tractors they like. And now I'm in front of a crowd where I can talk tractors, so I am really looking forward to the next 4.5 hours. So in all honesty, full disclosure, I just found out I was doing this a couple nights ago. So and I've been here at the show. So I slapped some photographs together really quick, and so if I stumble around a little bit, it's because I am 100% making it up as I go. Okay. But so the chill plow tractors, you know, I first became aware of the chill plow tractors through discussions with Doug Strasser. And, you know, basically, for those of you that don't know, the chill plow, the Oliver chill plow tractors that have been on display, they were actually produced by Oliver Chill Plow, not Oliver Farm Equipment. Okay, so this is pre-merger. This is before 1929, before there was a Hart car influence or American Seating or Nichols and Shepard. So Herman and Rudy Altgeld were two engineers that worked for Oliver Chill Plow, and they were plow guys. Best known, they invented the Radex plow bottom. And they were very, very mechanically inclined, the two of them. And so the powers that be at Chill Plow put the Altgeld brothers in charge of this project. Now, you gotta think what was happening in, like, you know, we have to assume that maybe they were starting this project in 25 or 20, maybe even as early as 24. The first tractors, you know, kind of came onto the scene in late 26. And you have to stop and think what tractors were like then. Okay, tractors were like what you see up there on the screen. They were these big, heavy, standard tread, you know, four-wheel tractors. So when this design came forth of this single front wheel, I mean, that was like revolutionary, and I mean, nobody had ever seen anything like that. You know, Farmall came out with this in 1923, and they called it, you know, it was International Harvester, and they called this the Farmall, where it would work on all farms in these row crop situations. And what did Oliver call theirs? The row crop. Well, you know that, you know, Hart car basically invented the word tractor, right? Did you realize that row crop also began with Oliver? And if you look around and even today, I mean, they'll call it a John Deere 630 row crop. So that's something that I kind of found out, I didn't find it out, I realized it. Whenever you read some of the early texts on the Oliver Chill plow tractor, they refer to it as the row crop, and many times put row crop in capital letters. So they were really trying to drive home that this was different. The first designs, I'm not going to get into a bunch of detail on production numbers, dates, what came first, what came second, because Sean and I have been talking on the phone and sitting over there and gabbing, and the story is evolving. Okay, so Greg said, hey, you guys are gonna write an article for the magazine, right? And I'm like, yeah, but we really don't have the details, you know. So I don't want to tell you something that's wrong. So I'm going to give you basic history. Now, one of the things that came out on that row crop tractor, if you look on this as a patent drawing, what do you see there that's famous for Aumann? Those pipe-mounted implements, okay? And those stayed all the way to 3-digit tractors, 660s, 770s. So that was a real big innovation that the Aumann brothers came up with. And also, if you research the patents, there's all kinds of implements that fit on those pipes. So they were really creating a system for row crop farmers. I mean, you couldn't put a cultivator on a Fordson. Be a lot of lightning strikes in the field, right? So there's an example of a chill plow tractor with a mounted planter. There's what Sean and I consider the last version of the chill plow tractor that's going out on train cars, and I'm gonna preface this with, we think that there were one or two of the very first chill plow tractors, and it did not have Oliver on the side of the radiator. It was just plain. And then after that, there were three like Sean and Doug's tractor, okay? And then there were approximately 15 like my tractor. We think that's what the numbers were, around 20. So there were at least 3 iterations, and then today, as we were going through stuff, we're not positive that any of those tractors were exactly alike, whenever we started looking through things. So what has intrigued me about this tractor and this model is, I like tractors. I like almost everybody. Okay. The ones I don't like. What really intrigues me about this is the history and really the historical significance of this tractor. I mean, it's basically this and the Farmall Regular that was the basic design for every tractor manufacturer going forward from here. I mean, any successful tractor manufacturer from 1927 forward had a row crop design tractor. And that was really revolutionary. I mean, and I don't think we give it credit. I don't think we give it the deserving credit for what it was. Now, they did take the chill plow tractor and they did make a standard tread, and so when you look at that, what comes to mind? Fordson. Years and years and years ago, I think Kopschaholm was one of the coolest houses on the planet. And I was touring Kopschaholm, and we were all the way up at the top floor in the billiards room, if any of you know what that was, or have been there. And the tour guide at the time said, Thomas Edison used to come up here, Henry Ford used to come up here. In fact, it was in this room that J.D. Oliver and Henry Ford decided to make a tractor together. And I was like, whoa, hold the phone. Tell me more about that. Scared the hell out of her. She goes, I don't know anything more than that. And I haven't found out anything more than that. But when you look at these tractors, when you look at the row crop and you look at the Model B, and even when you look at the engine and the way that the exhaust is, it's very, very similar to a Fordson. So there was probably some kind of influence there. There was also a relationship between Oliver Chill Plow and Henry Ford, because who supplied all the plows for Fordsons, or most of the plows for Fordsons? Oliver. And in fact, you can find old advertisements with Fordson, and there'll be an Oliver Chill Plow logo right on the ad. So we've yet to prove that or find any concrete evidence of that, but it's out there. Now this is probably one of the early versions of the chill plow tractor, and if you look on the sides of the radiator, it doesn't have Oliver. So now I'm going to talk to you about my tractor, and we're going to share, or we're going to save facts about the chill plow tractor for the article, and Sean and I are going to work on that together, but he just doesn't know it yet. So this is Leo Ahart, and many years ago, Doug and I we were talking about the chill plow tractor, and he had the honor of getting information directly from Herman Altgeld over the years. Doug Strasser, for those of you who do not know, was a man way ahead of his time. He was talking to Hart Car employees in the 70s, whenever there were still Hart Car employees to talk to. So he was a historian gathering these facts then. Mr. Altgeld said that there was a tractor that went to Iowa to be tested. Doug's tractor was in Robstown, Texas. And he said that he and his brother Rudy remembered walking down this long lane in Iowa back to this farm, and this gentleman was testing one of the chill plow tractors. Well, Leo Ahart was a 1917 graduate of Iowa State with an ag engineering degree. So he had the mechanical aptitude that if he was driving a tractor and something wasn't working, he could kind of figure it out, and he could relay better information back to the company. Well, he was a pretty cool guy, and he was totally into plowing as well. He even came up with his own method of tractor plowing and laying out a field. So you can kind of see why he and the Altgeld brothers would get along really good. He also was, how many people in here are engineers? Mechanical engineers, ag engineers? All right. You know how to tell the outgoing engineer? He's the one that looks at your shoes. Yeah. All right, so here you've got this Leo Ahart, who is somewhat of a mechanical genius, and he is. I want you to stop and think about the time, okay? So he gets involved in these tractors in 1917, which would be like getting involved in AI right now. It's brand new, and like nobody understands it. Nobody understands what's going on, and he's out there trying to educate these farmers on this brand spanking new machine that you can go out and plow with, that you do not have to feed hay to, and you do not have to gather up the manure that it produces. Okay, and I want you to think about the farmer. This is like a whiz-bang thing. I mean, they don't know the concept of internal combustion. They don't know that how a magneto works to produce a spark so you can start the tractor. They don't know to oil and lubricate. So I like this article that Leo Ahart wrote. He says, the driver is often the biggest nut on the farm tractor. And he goes on to say that most of the repairs that are being done on the farm tractor, they didn't need to happen. The dude didn't oil anything, So you've got Leo Ahart out there. Once I'm going to tell you about how I got the tractor first, so I can tie this story together. So my tractor was Doug knew that it was in Iowa. He'd also found in some Oliver Shields that it was on this Ahart farm in Dow City. Okay. At the 1992 Ageless Iron Expo, Doug stepped in the Oliver tent, and this fellow named Don Peck. I don't know if anybody knew the collector from up in Iowa named Don Peck. So Don Peck walks into the tent. He's like, boy, I was just at this salvage yard, and there was this tractor, and it said Oliver right down the side of the radiator. That would not have meant anything to anybody else on the planet Earth except Doug. And he's like, tell me more about that. And so anyhow, there was a man named Randy Lillehome who ran a pretty good sized salvage yard in Vale, Iowa. He was also a tractor collector. He went to a farm auction, which was on the Ahart farm, and he bought this tractor. And he brought it home, didn't really know what he had. Doug was able to track him down to the salvage yard, and they talked, and Doug informed him, with what he had. I remember Doug saying, I think he understood it, but not positive that he understood it. Well, unfortunately, Mr. Lilleholm was passed away due to an accident in the salvage yard. He was on his second marriage, which was right before his death, and his wife had an auction, and she sold 200 tractors, except for one. And she put that into a storage unit in the little town of Vale, Iowa. Well, at that point, Doug lost the tractor. He assumed it was sold on the sale. So lots of years pass, and we get talking about the chill plow tractors, and we tell this story again, and we're going through this story, and I said, that's always been one of my bucket list tractors. I said, maybe we ought to try to track that down. So I found Mary Lilleholm, and Doug had talked to her many years previous, and so I got her contact information. Doug called her since he'd talked to her before, and she says, yeah, I've still got the tractor. So my phone rings, and there was a heavy breather on the other side of the phone, and it was Doug. And he goes, she's got the tractor, she's got the tractor. So we talk to Mary, we tell her what she's got. She didn't really understand what she had, so we tell her what she's got. And, I asked her if she ever wants to sell it. She didn't want to sell it. So a couple of years go by, and I get the call, and I go to Vale, Iowa, and I get the tractor. 18 miles from the Ahart farm. So it didn't travel very far. Then, Kelly is big into genealogy, so Ancestry.com is open almost every day at our house. And so I get on Ancestry.com, I start researching the Aharts. Leo Ahart had 8 kids, and there were 2 still alive, a boy and a girl, and the boy was 92. And I get a hold of him, and I start describing the tractor, and he's like, yeah, I remember that tractor. Oh, my brothers loved that tractor. We had that tractor on the farm. In fact, they were supposed to take that tractor back and scrap it, and my brothers rode my dad so hard to keep that tractor that he cut a deal with the Altgeld brothers that if we could keep the tractor, he would continue to test tractors for Oliver. And then he goes, hey, you want some pictures of it? Yeah. And so that was a picture that he sent me of the tractor working in the field. This was a picture of one of his brothers that designed a dozer blade for the front of a row crop tractor. And he went into the horseweed excavation business, because I think that's probably all that would do. I think it'd be a big race between a big boy and a number 5 aluminum scoop shovel and this tractor with a blade on it. But they were a very, very mechanical family. A lot of inventions are actually attributed to the Ahart family. That is Leo Ahart, and as you can see, he continued to test tractors for Oliver. You can't see it, but I could when I blew the picture up. The patch on his coveralls is a 4-company Oliver Shield. And that's obviously a row crop tractor, not a chill plow tractor. That's an 1827 single wheel row crop. But have you ever seen an exhaust like that on a row crop tractor? And there's several other little things. I think that is probably a prototype single wheel row crop that he's testing on the farm. Leo Ahart kind of had a little cottage industry going on because he did have mechanical aptitude. He was actually testing tractors for oil pull Rumley and Case at the same time. Leo Ahart was probably farming his 590-acre farm using everybody else's equipment. Leo Ahart was a sharp cat. They also sent me a picture of one of the oil pull Rumleys that he was testing, which was clearly an experimental tractor. And there's a collector in Iowa named Mike Travis who has that tractor, which I was able to track down. That is a picture that I did not have until Sean sent it to me, a couple weeks ago or something. 3 weeks ago. And I was like, oh, because Doug had told me that it had sat in an open front cattle shed, but when I got pictures of the tractor, it was sitting outside. So I don't know if this was at Little Homes. I'm assuming this was at Little Homes. It could have been on the Ahart farm. I don't know. Do you know? Yeah. And then that's the first picture that I got of the tractor. And it was sitting outside, and it had sat outside for quite some time. But it had been in the storage unit for at least 3 or 4 years. So at some point she had moved it. That's the first time I saw the tractor. There was an '86 Mustang on 4 flat tires sitting in front of this tractor. As you can see, the manifold, that's Mary Little Home. Whenever I loaded it up, I look like the Jolly Green Giant in that picture. It was pretty tough. That tractor had been used. The Ahart family, they were really fond of the tractor, and buddy boy, they got all the goodie out of it. That's the manifold, and one of the real characteristic kind of identifiers of a row crop tractor is that goofy manifold, with the muffler right in the center. Which, who else had that? Fortune. So there's definitely some kind of connection there, but I don't know if it was because that manifold was a prototype to an extent, but it was the thinnest, most wore out. I've never seen a manifold that bad. When I took the bolts out of it, it literally came apart in 3 or 4 pieces. I mean, it just crumbled, which it's a problem. I thought, well, I'll find a manifold. They are made out of a substance called unobtainium, and they are not out there. That's a Hercules engine in the tractor. Sean's is a Model O, mine's a Model OX. When you look in the Hercules O and OX parts book, or at least the one that I have, when you turn to the manifold page, there is no parts listing, there are no illustrations, there are, in big letters, there are 17 different manifolds available for the Model OX engine. Please call your dealer for your application. So, I don't know if Jill Plow made the manifold, if Hercules made the manifold, but as far as I can tell, that there were probably only 20 of those manifolds built. Although we have found differences in the manifolds as they went along. So, you don't have to know everything, but you got to know the people. You got to know the right person. All right. So I've had a young guy that has helped me on really difficult. I've been to pre-1930 tractors too. Some of the crazy stuff that one of or 2 of or 3 of, and there's no getting parts for those. So I have a young man that has helped me on those. That is he's a mechanical engineer from Purdue, and he will help me fabricate parts and make parts, and the boy's a genius as far as I'm concerned. So what he did is we took what the remnants of the manifold that you saw in that picture, and he 3D scanned that manifold, which is the top picture there in the black. Then he filled in all the holes and re-engineered parts of that manifold and on the computer, and that is the image that you see at the bottom. And then as he continued to tweak, and we got to what we thought was the final image, which is the larger image that you see there, he emailed that file up to Dakota Foundry. Corey Anderson, the guy that made the 150 horsepower case steam engine, we sent it up to we sent an email to his foundry. His printer, 3D printer that prints sand, printed out the mold for that manifold, and they poured it with metal, and voila, it's like Star Trek. A fascinating project. I would tell you what it cost, but Kelly's sitting in the front row, so we're just going to keep that secret. So that is such a precise process that whenever it is poured, there was very little machining that needed to be done on it. He obviously machined the ports and the carburetor, but I mean, it comes out as a super clean casting. That technology in the last 5 years has the cost of that has cut in half in the last 5 years. So I mean, it is a very accessible technology for you to use for tractor parts, and it's out there, and you know, they're doing it every day. So that's how we made the manifold. One of the other interesting things that Herman Altgeld came up with was because he was an engineer and he understood how engines work. He knew that they had to be lubricated and that they had to have clean air. And you know, a tractor's out in the field, you know, it's in dusty conditions. So Herman Altgeld patented this air cleaner. And you know, when you look at that, I mean, kind of looks like a air cleaner on a 74 F-150, right? I mean, it's the circular, you know, that is as close to kind of a more modern day air cleaner. And remember, this is like, you know, when he came up with that, because he patented it in like 28, I think he filed a patent application, so he was probably thinking about this in, you know, 25, 26, you know, because the first tractors were produced with this in 27. Now, the only thing that was a little less, you know, that wasn't real modern about this air cleaner system was when I first took the cap off of the tank, I thought, what in the heck is down in that hole? And so I went and got my little hook and I dug around down in there and I pulled it out. And I thought, this thing's full of hair. And it was completely full of horsehair. And I thought, well, you know, Ahart, Aumann, we're both German. I get it. It was cheap. Until you read the patent application, and Herman Altgeld specifically specified that you put hair in there and you put oil on it, and that would catch the dirt. So, you know, the one side benefit of this project was I was able to mix that up with a little fresh water, and I got a new pony for my granddaughter. Now, whenever I don't know if you can see it on the screen or not. Can you barely make out the Model A? I mean, it's barely there. So then, you know, I have this debate on the tractor. I like original finished stuff. I've got restored tractors, but I like original finished stuff. And you know, I do have to throw in on the trip out to, Doug and I talk about this thing constantly, okay? a couple times a week, always at least on Sunday, we would talk about this tractor. And I had actually invited him to go out with me to pick it up, and he couldn't go for various reasons. But you know, he would call me and he'd say, "Okay, you're about at Des Moines." And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." he was a master at that. So he went with me on the trip, and just via telephone. But we were talking about about the tractor and what to do and how to restore it. And you know, Doug didn't have a choice on his tractor. It was pretty tough, you know, especially the sheet metal. It was down by Corpus Christi, Texas, and that salt water, you know, salt water produces metal mites. You know, metal mites eat the metal, and it was rusted out. So I told Doug, when I saw stuff like this where I could see Model A still on the gas tank, I said, I'm not going to paint mine. I'm gonna try to preserve it and preserve that original patina. That way our tractors will be different. Little did I know that they're already way different. But you know, it gives you a good example of both ways. So I don't know if anybody has. It's becoming a bigger trend in antique tractors, this original paint stuff, right? And so, you know, people are performing a restoration as opposed to a restoration. And there are products out there that will take it will dissolve the rust but leave the paint. And there's a lot of different products. You know, there's a concrete acid etch that you can do, but you got to watch that stuff. If you let that go too far, it'll go too far. And it's a little hazardous to work with. There's also a product that Rust-Oleum makes called a rust dissolver, and it comes in a little spray bottle, and it's kind of cross between tree sap and snot. You know, I mean, it's nasty. It's pretty nasty. But you put it on there, and it's a gel, almost like a gel, and you have to watch it. I mean, you can't walk away from it, and depending on what kind of rust it's on, you know, it'll take care of it in 10 minutes or 30 minutes. And I bought that stuff by the case. And that's an example on the fender where I just did one application, and I mean, that's pretty amazing how to get rid of that rust. That's the radiator, the difference that it can make, you know, from rust to original paint. Now, the other problem that I had on the tractor was at some point the Ahart boys had painted it. And I think they had leftover silver paint from the barn, you know, from the barn roof, because it was kind of silver. And then any place where there was a red pinstripe, they had went over it with green. And so I had to, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but I had to take that layer off just one little bit at a time, and using products like graffiti remover or gasket remover, and it's pretty meticulous work. And sometimes you'd work all day and you go in the house and you've done like 2 square feet, but you could take it down to the original paint and get it down to the original paint. So I started tearing the tractor apart. Pretty much everywhere that I looked, it had some pretty substantial wear. The engine was pretty tough shape. It was loosey-goosey from one end to the other. And the Jansen brothers, who, if any of you went on the tour over here to Siegel to Jansen's garage, they were the ones that did the engine work for me. If you'll see the manifold on there, that's a Hercules manifold that Doug gave me so that I could get the tractor, so I could get the engine started. That Hercules engine was used in numerous applications, power units, marine engines, and John Deere combines. So there was a John Deere pull-type combine that sacrificed its life in the restoration of the chill plow tractor. That's what that manifold was off of. And it bolts right up. It bolts right to the engine, but the exhaust went straight up. as opposed to coming out the side. There's no hole in the hood, so I couldn't use that manifold. The other problem with the tractor is the steel wheels have been cut off. When I was talking to Vince Ahart, Leo Ahart's son, I was looking for the ring that went around the wheels, and I was hoping that maybe it was still on the farm whenever they had cut the wheels off. And he said, no, he said the farm's been cleaned up a long time ago, but he said, I remember the summer day that the road commissioner came up the driveway, and my brothers and I had been running the tractor up and down the road with those aggressive tiptoe lugs. And he said, I remember the talk that he gave my dad, because I've never seen anybody talk to my dad that way. And he said it was that next week that we cut the steel wheels down and we put rubber tires on it. And aside on the tiptoe wheels, these tractors were being tested down in Texas in sandy soil. And Herman Altgeld had noticed that the horses that were down there were getting mired down in that sand. And they couldn't pull well, but the ponies could. So do you know where the design for the tiptoe came from? A pony's hoof. He designed that lug off of a pony's hoof. And if you look at the very first lugs, which Sean has found some of the chill plow lugs of Doug's up there, that's exactly what it looks like. Yeah, that's a pretty wild story that I thought was pretty neat. The front, same thing had been done to the front wheel, so it'd been cut down and put on rubber. I don't know how you could wear a wheel out, the center of the wheel hub out, like these were. I mean, just, the bearings went out numerous times, and let me see if we can get a little video here. So we had the hubs. We had the hubs of the wheels. Okay, but that's it. That's all we had that was original. So what we had to do is we had to rebuild the entire wheel. This process, let me see if this works. This process, we are riveting new spokes onto the hub. And, basically what we had to do, this is on the front wheel. And this was the hardest place to get to. So we had to crib up the bottom with a small porta power. And then I was a rivet heater. And then KR would come along with an air hammer. And that is how you make a rivet. We luckily on the outer wheels. Let me get on to the next slide here. Sorry about that. Oh well. Would you guys like to watch this again? On the bigger wheels, we were able to use. It looks like a C-clamp, but it's got a porta power ram in it, and so we heat up the rivet, and it just squeeze it. So they were a little easier to do. Believe it or not, we did all three wheels in a day, and it wasn't a long day. So it was kind of a neat process. But that presented me with another problem. I had brand new wheels on a tractor that I was trying to look old. So here it was. I had to, I couldn't paint them. I couldn't put nice, pretty wheels on it like what's on Doug's tractor. It just wouldn't look right with an original patina. So I had to figure out how to make the wheels look old. And the great thing about doing this is when you mess up, you just start over. So I did a whole bunch of experimentation on this, but what finally ended up working was you put just enough paint on there to barely cover, and then you mixed up apple cider, hydrogen peroxide, and salt. And Captain Morgan. Oh, wait, no, I drank that, I'm sorry. And you put it into a spray bottle, and you sprayed the wheel down with it, and it would instantly start to rust, which you can see in the picture. So you've got kind of very light coverage of paint, and then you've got that rust coming out, and you let that dry. I did it again. I did it a second time after I Scotch-Brighted it, and then I put them outside for about a week. And, basically what ended up happening is you ended up with a completely imperfect, nasty paint job that looked old. And you can go look at the tractor. I had a lot of people say, "Boy, the paint really, you really brought that paint out on those wheels." But it was, it was part of the process. So the transmission, that is the first transmission that I ever took apart in my entire life, and it was, poor Kelly was counselor every evening when I'd come in talking about the transmission. I almost think she could put the transmission together now as much as I talked about it, and as long as it took me. Lesson there, though, is, you know what, just dive in and do it. I'd never done one before, and Carl Jansen told me, he says, don't get frustrated with yourself, because I told him, I said, I don't know if I can do this, Carl. And he said, I said, dive in and do it. Just know that you're going to put it together 6 or 7 times, before you get it right. And I used them all up, maybe a couple more, but you can do it, you dive in. But, that tractor was designed with the exception of the Hercules engine, and I don't think they ever intended to make their own engine. They never did, after went to a walk shop, right? But other than that, that tractor was designed from the ground up. So Herman Altgeld had actually designed that 4-speed transmission. And there is barely enough room. You can tell that it's a prototype because the 2 bull gears are so close together. It's got tapered roller bearings in there. So to control the in-play on those axles and those tapered roller bearings, they said, well, just make sure the axles butt up against each other. So when you go to put the second bull gear in, you have to slide the axle in and screw the axle into the nut because there's not enough clearance, which is pretty wild. So, it went through, it's the nut and bolt restoration. It's a classic story of a nut and bolt restoration. Not one nut was out of it. And so slowly but surely, wheels were added to the transmission. Interesting on the throwout bearing on that tractor, it's not a throwout bearing. It's a piece of Bakelite. Looks like a hockey puck. And I was going to replace it. I was going to try to put an actual throwout bearing in there, and I tried everything and tried cross-referencing measurements and couldn't find anything that would work. So I put the hockey puck back in there. It's that's a testament to, that's going to be 100 years old. It's pretty crazy. So each little step, it came back together. The front yoke on the tractor, right at the last minute when I was putting it on, I noticed something stamped in the back of the front yoke, and it was stamped Evans steel. And I thought, what the heck is that? And, it is much, much harder to cast steel than it is iron. So most tractor manufacturers, the parts that were cast out of steel, they actually had another foundry do that. And as I researched Evans Steel also made the front yokes for International Harvester tractors years later. So that's likely, besides the engine, that's likely the only piece that's not all over produced on the tractor. So, so as the tractor came back together, it was kind of one piece at a time. The wheels use that taper lock system, like it's on the real early 70s, and that's 6 cuss word job, taking those off. It's not a lot of fun. And after I got the wheels back on, about the last thing I needed to do on the tractor was put the fenders on, and I put the first fender on, and everybody's got a thinking chair in their shop, right? So I go back to my thinking chair and looking at that fender, and I'm like, there's something wrong with that, that's not right, and there is a ever so slight angle to those fender brackets, so there is a right and a left fender bracket. So guess what I had to do? I had to take the wheels back off. That was a down day at the Aumann Ranch. And so that's the tractor. The tractor was finished then, and I want to say that I would not have that tractor if it wasn't for that guy on that screen right there. And there's a lot of people who are collectors, but Doug was a historian. He collected the tractors because of the story and because of the men that made them and the ladies that made them, and that story would get him more excited than hearing a tractor run. And he's a great friend of mine, and I don't think the guy gets the credit that he deserves for the history that he has preserved over all these years. So, and that is the story of the Oliver Field block tractor. Anybody got any questions?
Where would it go?
South Bend. Yep, South Bend. Yeah, Lance.
What's the date of that patent? Had several patents. What was the date of that?
Well, the patents ran from 20, you help me, Sean, 27, 28 when they were filed, and not granted until about 31. 32, yeah. So they were much later than the work on the tractors, because some of those patents weren't even filed before there was a train car load of tractors, which seems a little odd, but.
Did you keep track of man hours?
Did I keep track of man hours? No, but I should have put the meme up there, but Kelly had a meme, and it was a scene from the Titanic, and it was how I tell my wife I'm going to the shop, and Leonardo DiCaprio leans down to Kate Blanchett and says, I'm going out to the shop now. And she said, will you be long? And he says, it's just 3 bolts. And he leaves, and then it goes to the scene of the old woman that was a survivor on the Titanic. And then she says, it's been 84 years, and he's just a memory now. So it was a lot of hours. Yeah, it was a lot of hours.
About months or years that it took from the time you got the tractor to you finished it?
Well, I mean, actually, it was, when I got it, I was so pumped. I think I got it in 21. Yeah, I think it was 21, spring of 21. So a couple of years. Okay, thank you.